So, Turning Red is one of the latest Pixar films. Well, besides Lightyear and Elemental, but much like Lightyear and Elemental, this was actually one of the Pixar movies that I actually didn't have on the mind to watch, or was even interested in watching, because back during March of 2022, I was busy watching Code Lyoko in preparation for my review on that, and even then, it took to the beginning of May for me to finish watching it, because of the fact that there were literally 95 episodes, and I'd take a break after watching 2 or 3 episodes a day because of how heavy and formulaic it was. And then when I finished watching that, I decided to go ahead and watch Kappa Mikey, though that ended up being more of a breeze. Then I decided to watch Over the Garden Wall. And then after that, I was pretty much burned out for the rest of 2022, basically drawing and working on some videos I needed to get out of my system. Then when I compiled a list of movies that I would review for this series, I decided to add Turning Red to the large list of films that I would take a look at for this review series. And the movie that I'm reviewing today is what is considered as one of Pixar's more divided features, besides A Bug's Life, which is Turning Red. Some people like this movie for how funny and bold that can get with how it handles puberty. Others are turned off by it because of its more awkward and cringe-inducing moments, and others find it to be a mixed bag. But for me, I find it to be just decent. So, what is this movie about? This film revolves around a Canadian girl named Mei Lee. After a misunderstanding where her mother thinks that a store clerk did a bunch of things to her because of drawings, I'll come back to that in a little bit, Mei finds out about a curse of her family that causes her to turn into a fluffy red panda when feeling any sort of extreme emotions. But at the same time, Mei wants to go to a concert on the same night as a ritual her family is giving to her to make sure that the panda would be gone, and the panda is a symbolism for puberty. Now, when going into this movie, I was expecting to get a lot of good things, but at the exact same time, quite a few issues that do hold the film back in a lot of areas, which is kind of the reason as to why a lot of people see this film as a mixed bag, but at the same time, I see a lot of misconceptions that ended up being made about this movie that I do have to disagree with. For starters, the thing that actually was a bit worrying going in is some of this movie's more suggestive content. Now, Pixar has gotten very adult before. The Incredibles 2 was the first time they weren't afraid to swear at all, and other times they went very extreme with it. A Bug's Life's climax had the main villain get fed to 3 baby birds in a way that is already dark, but given the size of Hopper compared to the 3 of them, it might have gotten much more dark if they didn't have a first-person view going inside the middle one's mouth. And The Incredibles has the highest death count in all of Pixar. That sequence which shows all the heroes who have been terminated was very chilling. And there's also The Good Dinosaur, but that film's adult moments were jarring, enough said. And well, when it comes to Turning Red, it actually goes into another direction. This movie is about puberty after all, although it's not nearly as bad as people made it out to be. Though yes, the twerking is very, very bad. And as of 2022, this is the only Pixar movie that I could recall the word sexy being said, but the rest of the movie is actually pretty tame with it, and I don't recall any other moments of the film that were that discomforting. I can name off plenty of other shows and movies that had episodes or moments that made me feel more uncomfortable than this movie did. Heck, even The Boss Baby had sequences that made me feel more discomforted than this film, and the less said about that movie's questionable content, the better. Turning Red is very subtle with it, as the film focuses more on Mei's mental health and how she's changing, rather than most of its suggestive content. And it was a wise decision to have the red panda be the symbolism, rather than doing it directly. Because, well, if you do it directly, you get Big Mouth. Enough said. Another major controversy that people get into debates about with this movie is Mei's mother Ming, and this is the closest pointer I could see as to why people don't like this character, and let me be clear, I don't like these types of characters either. That's why I can't stand Mrs. Benson from iCarly. I find her to be infuriating and obnoxious. Ming is a helicopter parent that is super controlling and blind to everyone else around them. I brought up this comparison when I talked about the movie 9 when it came to the character 1, Ming is at least better than 1, because Ming at least cares about her daughter, whereas 1 was perfectly fine with others being killed, even before the world was put in danger again, if it meant that he and the others would stay safe. And this movie does offer an explanation as to why she's like this in the first place, and that is because her own mother was like this towards her. But at the exact same time, that's an explanation, not an excuse. The fact that she would actively jump to the conclusion that the store employee Devin actively did stuff to Mei over drawings that she made is actively insane, and it gets worse with the fact that Mei is trying to explain to her that he didn't actually do those things to her, and didn't realize that people get a crush and fantasize about others all the time. And later on in the movie, when she decides that instead of suspecting that Mei was the one who was lying and keeping the panda a secret, she decides to blame her friends, even though earlier on in the film, she was wanting to go to a concert. And the film's overall portrayal of adolescence is actually a lot better than I expected. Mei is a very relatable character in this movie. I mean, she is a very kind-hearted character, but most of her weaknesses come down to the fact that she's not too vocal towards her mother. But that is a part of being a teenager. Most people aren't really as comfortable with asserting themselves to their parents as others, nor are people that assertive. I know for sure that I was and still am kind of not social or assertive in the exact same way that Mei is like in this movie. Going in, you'd expect that this movie would show Mei as being entirely unpleasant. Most cartoon shows and even movies portray their teen characters as being both disobedient and completely nasty, as well as being arrogant and absolutely obnoxious. I had this same problem with Ollie's Pack, which I pointed out back during my review on that, and this is also why I dislike the Katie Kaboom segments from Animaniacs, because every single one of its segments were like this. Combine that with the factor of it playing out the exact same way every single time. This is also a problem with Monster Family, as well as Sahara and Spark a Space Tale, though those two are for later reviews. Sure, the ending of the film has this, but all of it is a result of how much stress and want that Mei held in for all of that time, and it's a result of miscommunication. As Mei is afraid to speak up out of fear of disobeying her mother, but at the exact same time, it's also the result of her transforming into a fluffy red panda, which shows that there are other ways of showing that a character is going through puberty than just fighting with their parents, and this is a pretty good showcase of that. So overall, if you do want to see an animated movie that goes into the topic of puberty but is subtle with it and is a fun watch, watching Turning Red isn't going to hurt all that much. And while I don't like this movie as much as The Teacher's Pet movie or Storks, this movie was a pleasant watch. And if there's one benefit that I could definitely give this film over Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland and 9, it's that this movie at least kept me interested, and the movie goes somewhere with its writing to keep the pacing balanced.
Everything I